Hello, this is going to be a reply to WiseMonkey. Hello WiseMonkey. I don't know your Christian name or surname or real name or anything. Maybe nobody does. I'm less than a second into your video, and this is just to say I'm going to do a video reply. Don't know how it's going to turn out, because I feel I owe you a video reply. Because I empathise with you, whether you want to be empathised with or not. I feel your pain. Less than a second in, but there was a fraction of a second where you started the video normal cheeks, and then you started your sucking your cheeks in, and literally it's happened within I could say that's this part of the video reply, and we're not even a second in yet, that you've gone doing your face, your sucking a lemon face. Do as many of those as you like, it doesn't bother me, but I imagine it would bother people that don't like you. So I'll listen to, it's 17 minutes, so if it is really to me, I'll continue with this video with a stop and start sort of thing. See how we go, as they say. Right. Oh, this is me on my ears. I'll listen to it on my ears, so Mrs. Mystic doesn't have to listen to everybody. A description of me saying how wonderful I am at doing my economics things, which is always nice to listen to. One never minds that. Then a description of what I used to do before that, which was lots of talk mainly about free will, but he didn't mention the free will, but said as what intellectuals would call from the amateur side. And I don't mind that at all. I'm well happy with that. I don't like you. Oh, I just got the thumbs up in the dark area. I don't like using it. I've got the books on philosophy, not as many as real philosopher people that take it seriously. I could use the long words and their sort of descriptions, but have chosen indeed not to. So yes, from the amateur side, definitely, I definitely agree with that description. We're not even, oh yes, we're under 2 minutes, but compliments still flying in, which is, I know how life goes, it's always a precursor to set you up to knock you down, which I don't think he'll do to a greater extent, not directly anyway. But an interesting point that we should be more careful about what we expose ourselves to on the internet, but obviously that runs through everything in life. If you start joining a Nazi white racist skinhead club, the chances are further down the road you'll do socially unacceptable things. Okay. I'll let that run because it looks as though he might. I'm talking to you, aren't you? WM. I'm going to call you Frank. It looks what Frank's saying is about philosophy anyway. He might be getting the wrong idea. I was just reading somebody else's comment out last night on the Gary video. It wasn't mine, but that doesn't matter. I'm only halfway through that. And you might tidy it up, and it doesn't matter, it is totally inconsequential anyway. But we've got the word philosophy, and you're saying what the word philosophy means. And I've never looked it up. I've never been told by a professor what it is. And it's interesting that we talk about philosophy and what it might be. Actually, I did hear on my... I was listening to a podcast of a philosopher talking about what philosophy was. It was a lecture at the London School of Economics. He said it was the study of, I forget, but it's interesting that even to get to a word, and like philosophy, is it important if I say I'm doing philosophy when I'm really not? I'm not saying that's what you're saying, but would it matter anyway? I don't know. I'll let you run on. But it's just words. They're very interesting. More just to keep my camera going than anything else. I'm to the part where you're saying that Gary's anti-natalist ideas, well, I'll paraphrase and I don't care if it's wrong, are dated, and you're going to explain new theories that are going to supersede them in some way, and I'm looking forward to that. And I'm not doing this because I'm bored, I'm just very hot. It's a very hot day, very hot day. You'd melt from up in your northern Erie. I think it said 34 on the temperature gauge. And one more sentence in. Gary is not taking into account the evolutionary progress within, was that within society? I think it was. I'll just run it back a little and listen. Here you go. The idea of an evolutionary progress within humanity. That's good. I can talk about that. There's some things I just don't talk about. I can talk about that. So I'll let you go on and I'll be able to reply to you about that. Progress. I see none. Yeah. Fountain of Youth by genetic engineering for humans, or potentially obviously anybody or anything. Dolly the dog. That's, I'll let you run and see if you can make sense of it, but so what? Do I talk this as Gary's idea or mine? I know what Gary would say. It's a horror show anyway, so why do you want to live for 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 years in a horror show for? I don't do the horror show thing. I just go to the futility of it all. So why do I want to do something futile for 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 years? What on earth would I want to do that for? But I'll let you go. Now we're going off into space. From my point of view, what on earth for? It's not getting anywhere. Just because it's going further away, it's not going anywhere. It's not progress. It's what some scientists have called progress. If you can send people to Mars, which they can't do now, they'd say that that's progress. I wouldn't. Because it's not doing anything. It's not achieving any purpose. And it's not that I'm setting the bar high for my definition of achieving purpose with this humanity thing, life thing. I'm setting the bar at, I'm saying it's impossible. I'm saying it is utterly and totally impossible to do anything constructive with this whole life thing. It is impossible. As far as I can say, okay, you know, there could be somebody out there that can come up with something, but my life experience so far, you know, when somebody has not got anywhere near explaining something to you, and you go, well, and then other people have said things that through the time goes, and to the extent you go, no, it's not going to happen, because nobody's got anywhere near it. Nobody has got anywhere near explaining to me how this life is anything but totally and utterly futile. If you, me, or 25 generations on start living to be 500 years old and going to Mars and back in the morning, or Alpha Centauri, or Planet Zog, so what? That's the thing. So what? It's a complete waste of time. I hate this waste of time because it's a really trapping phrase, and it's me that it traps. But what's the point? What is the point? What's the point of going to the planet Zog? What's the point of getting to the planet Zog in 2.5 seconds and coming back 2.5 seconds later? I mean, there's no point to it all. It's pointless. Life is pointless. And of course we can invent our little points. We're doing it all the time. I often explain this. I mean, I'm really exploring this camera now. I've had the instructions out again. I've been carefully through them. And I was doing video shots up a tape measure to get my focusing right, to see where it prefers to focus, so I can make some nice nature photographs, videos, or video myself better. Or we do all these little things because it temporarily makes us feel better, but it is pointless, as in an ultimate thing. It's got a point for me that it gives me a little ego boost. It gives me a little bit of pleasure. But when what I think is philosophy, which is looking at things in a big way, is philosophy, in a big way. And in a big way, whether I can focus the camera or not on the hummingbird hawk moth and the lavender, it's pointless. It's useless. Absolutely useless. And you can say, you get these knock-on things that people go, they kind of get stuck on that and go, yeah, maybe it is, maybe it is. But then you can teach somebody else to be able to photograph brilliantly hummingbird hawk moths on lavender and think that that's a point, which obviously it isn't. That is pointless as well. But anyway, I'm taking up too much time. You've summed it up with the expression, life is not necessarily a hopeless endeavour. It depends which way you look at it. I think, looking at it in the philosophical way, repeat, the big way, it obviously is, because it is all pointless. Whether, even if we all live in geodesic domes, loving each other all day long, that is still pointless. Now, I accept, I just got to repeat myself, but from a personal point of view, life doesn't have to be pointless. I don't have to sit there here in misery just going, oh, another YouTube wanker on the YouTubes. That's, I can go out and photograph hummingbird hawk moths on the lavender. But that's a personal point of view. It's not hopeless. But from a big philosophical point of view, I think it obviously is. And then I suppose you'd say then, but then you take all the individuals and they're all doing something hopeful and they're all kind of happily, hopefully doing this sort of stuff. And then that makes the big picture. And I've got to say no, because we're just fucking about. We're just pretending. I'm only doing the thing for the camera to fill time in, to give me a little ego boost in time, because it'll give me a bit more of an ego boost than sitting here watching cats play pianos on YouTube, or whatever it might be, an example of something else, or doing nothing, or having another shower. I mean, just because you get lots of something, it doesn't make it into a big thing, when those lots of little things are pointless in their own little way. Well, I'll let you go again. You might have to explain this bit to me. I'll give it a shot. Socrates and Aristotle, leave Plato out, eh? You jumped him. Were doing things, presumes thou, in a way that was egoless. They were really coldly scientific. But a lot of modern day academia is ego boosting. All I'll say for the moment is, whether it's Socrates or Aristotle or Professor Anton and To Be Serious and their pretend academia stuff, it doesn't really matter, because it's all pointless, philosophically. Oh, I get you now. Okay, it's on Gary. Gary. And you're saying that basically he believes in what he's doing. Therefore, it's not just an ego-boosting thing, whereas the Professor Anton, to be serious, is representing academia, quoting bits out of various books and people like Socrates and Aristotle to actually be an ego-boosting thing, not a genuine explanation. It's a word like that. Talking out of academia is not... Academia, the way it's often put out, is more ego-boosting as opposed to really trying to get real work done. Exposition, I think the word was. I don't know if you actually, I haven't even put the video up, so I don't know if I would. Why Gary, and to a degree myself, might be more acceptable to you where the academics are not, is probably the ego thing, but it's very understandable because Gary and I are amateurs, so we don't have to pretend to be academics. We don't have to quote all these book ways of saying things. We can just say it as we see it. In an amateur way, and in a way not that's just amateur, but in a way that is more felt, because that is the reasoning that we're doing it, as opposed to the academics who are, to a greater extent, trying to prove something to their peers, their other academics, and presumably to themselves as well, that their academic book learning has been worthwhile. I personally probably think it isn't, unless they're geniuses, and I know I'm not a genius, but that I'm a long way behind. Can't say I've read all these books, 95% of these books, and lots of others. I can't remember a word of them. And I don't think academics can either, unless they make special effort to remember bits out of books. And I think that's what you get from academics, is their pride of being able to regurgitate bits out of books, which doesn't actually make for a coherent picture of anything. What you get from, say, Gary, yourself, or myself, would be what we feel, so we can flow it out, because it just flows out easier, because it just is. It is how we feel it, as opposed to we're not trying to create an image or a picture of ourselves, or we're trying to do. We're not. Obviously, we do that in all life. Humans just do that when they communicate. But when it's to a lesser degree, the academics are always having in their mind that they must prove their academic superiority, and we don't have that pressure. Basically, it's easier for us to talk shit, which might come across as more honest, and in a way that might lead to the impression that we are more clinical or ruthless in our scientific endeavour, but I don't know that that actually does follow. Here I think you're making a mistake. I think what you've just said is that Gary is doing the right thing by robust attack of pseudo-academic science, but I think then the next move was an oblique attack to say, but then Gary bases a lot of what he says on pseudo-academic science. Now I think this is, obviously everything's to an extent right, but what I'll do, I'll kind of link Gary and I, so I can talk for myself, and I think I'm talking for Gary at the same time. Let's say on my opening few hundred videos on free will, I would talk in my amateur way, as you rightly point out, about free will from what I call a logical point of view. Not pure logic, because that's probably something in the books, but just logic. Logical, man-to-man sort of, well, what do you reckon? That's that, this is that, well, how could that possibly be that? Sort of logic. And only in extremis would I say, well, look, when it does come down, because people would say this, that, and that, and I'd say, well, when it comes down to it, science actually hasn't found any free will, and they've really been looking for it an awful lot. And I think to a greater extent, Gary does this as well. He pushes out the basic, as I've described for me, the basic logic of the position, and then will try and back it up with whatever pseudoscience he knows, or whatever science he knows. Like I would then say, well, because I'm just about up to date with neurobiology, but I can't be, because I do economics and play in the garden. I'm not a neuroscientist. So I do my best at that. But I think that, certainly for me anyway, that comes second. To back something up with a scientific, or what I know about scientific argument. And I think Gary understands that his is backed up by what his is a scientific way, but first line is always just the logic of the situation. Pragmatic capitalism, that's one of my favourite econ blog sites. Funny how that's the brain at work, isn't it? Pragmatic capitalism, as I say, is one of my favourite econ websites. So when I go to repeat what you said, which was pragmatic pessimism, real struggle. Pragmatic pessimism, you say, is the, let's get this right because this is vaguely important. I'm going to run out of space on this. I might have to put a new card in on the camera. I'm enjoying this, by the way. Pragmatic pessimism, I've got the right place. Is reasonable, you say. Is reasonable. So if for nothing else, let's say we're discussing the fancy video, and that shines out of there, because I think it's when the deer, or whatever it is, waterbuck, is having a drink, that Gary says pessimism is the rational or logical overall way of looking at things. Life. Pessimism is reasonable. But you don't necessarily agree that Gary's pessimism is reasonable. So now I'll come back when I've listened to your, because this is quite crucial, of course. Interesting. I'll just run it through, get the words right. The talking about antinatalism ultimately will volunteer itself into a place of self-extinction. Is pragmatically, you don't necessarily think it is awful. But then you say that's not pragmatic. So this is going to be interesting, because you've kind of set it up to hit the interesting side of it, and you haven't. You've hit the boring side of it. You hit the side that says, it would have been interesting if you'd hit, you know, we're on pragmatic pessimism. So, and you're going to attack it to a certain extent, but you're not going to attack the pessimism, you're going to attack the pragmatic, which I think is the boring half of the two words. Now, this is this is wrong. What you're saying here is, while it's right that we should acknowledge what I call spam, if anybody wants to adopt spam, they can. Suffering, pain, anguish, and misery. Spam. All right. While it is right that we acknowledge the spam, in and all the unpleasantness, that this evolving life, it's not evolving, it's changing, but evolving implication, the implication there is, oh, I've got less than a minute, the implication is it's going somewhere, bottom left, top right, it's going somewhere, but it isn't. So I'd say a premise was wrong there. That's deep psychology, isn't it? Is it? Or is, anyway, I've only just learned this. No, if we were going somewhere, yes, but I don't think we're going anywhere, and I doubt if in the last 4 minutes you're going to explain where we are going. I'm going to have to change the card and position. Just to get back in the way of the game, new card, new position, we were bottom left, top righting. Are we going anywhere? Whatever you say from here on in or around here now about anything, to me, is futile. Unless you can explain to me this going place somewhere. You had a little stab with living for 500 years or going to Mars. I wasn't impressed. If you'd like to have another go, top banana. But at the time of going to press, whatever you're saying about evolving and the implication that there's something else to balance out what you've described in your way as the spam, I'm not impressed. Now you've hit up with something that is really not worthy. You've hit us up with, we really don't know where this process is taking us. Now, please admit that that really isn't good enough. Pleading ignorance, therefore giving spam the benefit of the doubt, and I'm only talking about spam because you are, repeat, pleading ignorance and thereby giving spam the benefit of the doubt is not good enough. Oh, I suppose I should get this right. Okay. Pain and suffering. It's all fine and well and you can understand spam. But I don't adopt that. You're talking to me, not Gary, but just imagine what Gary would be saying. You know, should I play the Gary person? Because I don't do the spam thing. That isn't the angle I come from. But we can all think of nice things to think about and nice things to do and nice ways to get through this life and how to fill life up, photographing hummingbird hawk moths on lavender. We can all do it. But that is not enough. Just make, do and mend. Making the best of something. Stoic you used before. I think that's a better use of stoic. Being stoic is no balancing justification for spam, is it? Quote coming in, but there may be something in the future which surpasses the pain and suffering. Again, please admit that this is piss weak. Hey, it's nothing more than hope. Isn't it, really? It is really nothing more than hope. Should I let you go on while I'm... No, I'll turn it off. And we are a tenuous link in the chain to that place, this place in the future that we're hoping for will arise, and we might not actually reap any of the benefit of that ultimate assimilation of knowledge and the ability to harness vast energies to shape ecologies and whatever. Right, so now we can have, we'll just go to my people loving each other in their geodesic domes, and there's ultimate power. They could do anything or everything they want because there's no end to the power that they have, as in, not they physically, but a power source has been found that feeds plenty of power that they can use. There's no trouble with luxury, there's no trouble with farming, obviously, there's no trouble with anything. Science has evolved, so pain is really minimized, and life goes on for a long time, and there are occasional trips out to the planet Zog and back. So, speaking personally, I am not in the slightest bit impressed. Not at all. I would not want to be there. It's not my idea of paradise. And even if it was, that, all of that is still totally and utterly futile. Hey, isn't it? All these people in there, doesn't have to be domes, they can be in the green pastures and clean running water and lambs laying down with lions, and everybody is wonderfully loving each other, and it's really fabulous. So what? To me, that's the bottom line. That doesn't add up to a hill of beans. It is, again, I'm going to fall into this, it's a complete waste of time. It's just still utterly, completely useless. Whether there is spam there or there is no spam there, it is still useless, futile, inutile. And you're kind of rounding up with, you think it'd be kind of selfish to stop the experiment. You didn't say it, but the implication is there, just in case we get to this hoped for paradise. But I'll say, okay, have all that hope for paradise, but just have a little think about whether then that paradise, when it arrives, is anything at all. Anything at all. Hope's wonderful. Hope makes us, our own personal lives, a lot better. It's what humans do. Hope is brilliant. Hope is fantastic. Hope is the best thing a human can have, is hope. It does get us through this life, but it don't add up to anything at all. Just having hope, I totally agree, is a panacea. It's not a panacea. It is the thing to give people as the pap to get them through this life that has, in an antinatalist way, been forced upon them. Give them hope because they love this travelling somewhere, going somewhere idea. It really gives people that the brain, the whole obviously Darwinian human brain has been set up for these telescoped things where I'm really getting somewhere, I'm going somewhere. Short-term goals, medium-term goals, really long-term goals. The human brain loves it, so it can go loves it. So yes, though, if the idea is to give people hope to get them through this life that's been forced on them as nicely as possible. It's terrific. But it ain't philosophy, is it? Funny face, funny face. Is it? Next you say, don't you think it's incredibly unscientific? You seem to understand that. I just don't understand what you're talking about there. I have no idea. I don't really know what scientific is. So whether it's scientific or unscientific, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Let me have a stab at analytics, seeing you've had a stab. You've just likened yourself to myself and Gary as a group together of the semi-amateurs fighting a rearguard battle against the pseudo-academics. I'd just like to point out that that's just very natural human behaviour of grouping together to make a group to fight another group. And I'll just throw in, just to be naughty, that I'm sure that that's what they will be doing in their geodesic domes as well, if they're still human beings. And we get the end with unintelligent design. But who knows? Perhaps humanity, or a form of humanity, in the future may be able to intelligently design. So it's what they're I'll just link it to the economics. It's what they're doing with the bank's balance sheets. It's just hoping. It's just hoping things turn out all right. It is the best thing to do if we want happy, smiling people. You're a happy, smiling person here, right at the end of the video. It is best to if you want happy, smiling people, to fill them full of hope. But that is not. It doesn't gel with any sort of grounded logic that runs around in here, or any what I might call philosophy that runs around in here. It doesn't add up to hilly beans. All it adds up to is developing, what did I call them, efficient coping mechanisms for this life that we find ourselves with. Yep, it's top banana for that, hope is. But when it comes as anywhere close to a philosophical conversation, I think I would whiz over to the academic side, take the superior high ground and say, no, out with your hope, this is a philosophy class. Okay, so we've got to the end. I don't know how long that took, but I did enjoy it. And as I say, I've felt that I had owed you a video for a long time, so I'm glad I've done it. WiseMonkey, Fred, Frank, Bill, whoever you are, thanks, bye.